Everybody.
Hello,
I
hello.
get started in just a minute. It's a big group today, so if you aren't already on mute, if you don't mind muting yourself, just so that during the first part of this meeting, we can record the call and make sure everybody can hear well. But thank you so much for joining us this Saturday. I'm Catherine with Women Travel Abroad, the general manager of our community and business. And we have quite a few new members, some folks who know us well here today as well, folks who are our hosts and former travelers. And most importantly, we have Mayama, who is from Experience Morocco, is a native of Morocco, and is going to be sharing today her experiences planning travel and lots of travel tips. A few notes on logistics as we get started. We are going to use the chat feature, so feel free if you have questions that you aren't hearing answered as Mariama and I speak, put them in the chat and we will make sure we get to them at the end of the call. We will also have breakout rooms at the end where for those who haven't joined a standard community call where we don't have an expert speaker, we use these times as a chance to get to know each other, connect our community. And so we'll do some breakout rooms where you can meet some of the fellow women on this call, some of the Women Travel Abroad hosts as well, and just get to know each other a little bit better. So definitely do stick around after Mariama and I finish our Morocco specific talk and get to know some of the other women on this great group. So without any further ado, I'm sure we'll have a few other late joiners, but we are really excited to celebrate International Women's Day today and have a talk all about how to safely, comfortably, and really have an amazing adventure in Morocco. A little bit more just briefly about Women Travel Abroad. So we have these calls every week. And we are both a community on Meetup, how most of you probably found us. We have calls every Saturday virtually. We also have in-person meetups across 33 cities in the US, all focused on helping connect women travelers with other women who want to see the world. In addition, we plan small group trips to over 30 different countries. And these trips are exclusively for our Women Travel Abroad community members. Coming to a call like this is the first step in being able to join one of our trips. Our trips are 6 to 10 women. You always have a host from Women Travel Abroad there to provide you support and white glove service. And we really focus on having experiences that are culturally immersive, getting to know the local culture, local people, trying different foods, often doing cooking classes or craft making classes. And so if you are a solo woman traveler looking to not just travel totally solo, but with other like-minded women, we would love to welcome you on one of our trips. Um, and now let me spotlight Mariama. Awesome. Well, Mariama, if you want to introduce yourself briefly, tell us where are you calling from? That's always the first question we ask. And who are you?
Of course. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Happy International Women's Day to all of you. I'm Mayama, and I'm the General Manager at Experience Morocco, calling from very rainy Casablanca today. And we are a local travel company that specializes in helping businesses like Catherine's business run trips safely around Morocco.
Awesome. Well, I know Mariama very well because I actually personally lived in Morocco for 3 years from 2017 to 2020. And I had the pleasure of working with Mariama and the whole Experience Morocco team prior to coming working for Women Travel Abroad. So I'm very excited to be doing this call and reminiscing about my own time in Morocco and sharing more with folks about how to safely travel to a country that I consider my second home. So my first question is, can you share a little bit about where you think people should visit if they're going to Morocco for the first time? What are the highlights and things that they can't miss?
Of course. So, there are many highlights in Morocco, and I would say that the choice or the inclusions within your itinerary typically would depend firstly on the amount of time that you're given us to plan your trip, but also on the special interests that are bringing you to Morocco. So on the top tier one list, I would put Marrakesh. Marrakesh is like the most international, most known destination in the country. An incredible amount of hotels and riads, international brands and local brands. A great variety of
For
experiences versus history versus
go
food
first,
options.
and then it asked
Uh,
me if I want a co-signer, but I
If
did it without a co-signer.
people can just make sure that you're muted if you aren't already, that would be great. We just have a little bit of background noise. Thanks, everybody. All right, Mariam, if you want to unmute and then keep going.
Of
Perfect.
course. So we were talking about Marrakesh, which is like the most international destination, the one that has the biggest choice of like experiences and hotels and restaurants, and it has a little bit of everything. It offers a couple of like day trip options as well. So this would be like our number one highlight. Number two would be the city of Fez, located in kind of like the northern part of the country. Fez is the cultural epicenter of Morocco. It has all of the history, like the little medinas. The medina is a word in Arabic that simply means city. And in Morocco, it refers to the historical walled parts of every city that you go to. Typically, all of the monuments and the historical buildings are in the old parts of the city, so the Medina, and then everything outside would be a little bit more modern. So Fez has the biggest Medina in the country and the oldest one, more than 12 centuries old. It's known for having the best artisans in the country, which means that the architecture is a little bit more intricate than other parts of the country. If we're thinking the leather tanneries picture that I'm sure a lot of you have seen on magazines or on the internet, that's also in Fez. So a lot of like leather items, and then the best artisans from mosaics to brass etching to leather making. There's a lot to see around that if you're interested in arts and crafts. The shopping scene is also smaller, I would say, than Marrakesh, but more traditional. And the food, the city has always been like the center of wealth in the country for the longest time. So the residents of Fez had access to the best ingredients, which made their cuisine a lot more elevated and intricate than the rest of the country. So also cooking classes, tasting tours around the Medina, like these kinds of experiences. And then the third highlight, I would say, is the Sahara Desert experience. A lot of people think about, the sand dunes and the camels, and it's like the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Morocco. It's only one part of the country. Obviously, the country is not all desert, but having that one night glamping experience in the sand dunes, being able to ride the camels, do some sandboarding. If you're brave enough to try it, then that would be like the third main highlights of the country.
Awesome. I definitely think, well, one question we had in here was about Medina. So the Medina means the old walled part of the city. So the way Moroccan cities were built was initially, right, in the sort of times where there were still kings and sultanates, the cities were built like a fortress and everyone lived on the inside of the fort. And so there were these big walls. And today, what's really cool is that the walls have been maintained. So there's the old traditional centers of the city, the Medinas, where you have these really small houses, you have riads, which if you hear about sort of the best places to stay in Morocco, it's typically a riad, which is instead of having balconies on the outside, it has balconies on the inside. So these riads are built around small courtyards and they used to be multi-family homes that today have become small boutique hotels. And they're in the Medina, in the old walled part. The Fez Medina, it's actually the largest car-free zone in the world. So that's part of what makes it really unique is that you can walk through it. You know, there are carts with horses and donkeys and sheep and, all sorts of livestock, but there's no cars, there's motorbikes. But it's a really cool experience to be in a huge pedestrian area. So that to me is my favorite part of Fez. And I think that Fez is a really, honestly, sometimes underrated city in Morocco because it has so much history. You could probably live there your entire life and still not have walked like every tiny little alleyway. And I think if you really want that feeling of like going back in time, it's a really unique city to visit. So I love Fez, but yes, Marrakesh is sort of the iconic city of Morocco. And obviously, I don't think a trip is complete without visiting the Sahara Desert. The next question I have is, what is the best time of year to visit? When would you recommend people come to Morocco?
Sure. I would say that, we're blessed with, a very with great weather all year round. I would probably flip the question and answer which are the months to avoid, which easily would be July and August, simply because the Sahara Desert experience will not be available during that time of the year. But other than that, spring and fall are very, very popular, which makes them high season in Morocco. You get the best weather in both seasons, but also the winters are great. It depends on where you live in the US, but if you're coming from any, cold areas during the winter will be very mild here, like a few chances of rain, but sunny most days in all of the major cities, except if you are in the mountains where it can snow, and in the deserts where the temperatures in the winter can drop to like negative temperatures. But other than that, spring and fall, best times.
Uh,
Anything around that is still doable. July and August, we can't do the Sahara Desert. If you go to any of the major destinations or you're by the coast, it's still manageable. Like it's not going to be warmer than anywhere in southern Spain or like Rome. It's going to be almost the same.
I think that is, the key is what do you want to do and see in Morocco? That's what I always tell people is like, if you do want the Sahara, then the dead of winter or the dead of summer is a bit challenging, but we've hosted trips in August before, and we focus on the coastal towns and we focus on Marrakesh, and it is hot, but I liken the climate to a lot like California, right? You have the north of the country that's a bit cooler, like Northern California. You have an interior mountain range that helps keep things sort of green and draws in lots of rain during the winter. And then you have, beautiful beaches on the coast, and obviously the Sahara Desert, which I guess California kind of has a desert also in certain parts. So just like you can visit California any time of year, I would say you can find a place in Morocco, right, to visit any time of year. Just depends on what you want to see. We did have a question about Casablanca. So I will personally speak from having lived there for 3 years. It's not a tourist city. It's certainly worth, if you're flying in and out of the city one night, if you want to see, say, the Hassan II Mosque, which is the really big, beautiful mosque that's right on the coast. And it has some good restaurants. It's definitely very cosmopolitan and multicultural because it's the business center of Morocco, but it's not a place you need more than one night or even half a day. It really is a city that feels kind of like anywhere else in the world. It doesn't feel particularly Moroccan. It's much more modern than the rest of the country. I don't know, Mariam, if you have any other thoughts on what to see in Morocco or Casablanca if you're gonna stay.
Yeah, I would say that, well, just we don't hate Casablanca. Like, I wouldn't live anywhere else in Morocco. Like, I love living here as a local. I love how easy it is to get everything, etc. Having the biggest airport with all of the international connections is great. But when you're coming as a visitor, you have a more, like romanticized idea about what Morocco should look like, and it doesn't have a lot of Moroccan things. Like it's Medina, it's not comparable to any of the other Medinas if you're gonna see them. We have like two monuments, like the Hassan II Mosque and a museum of Jewish history. Actually, this month we opened like a museum of like the history of Casablanca, which is new, but it doesn't compare to other cities. And again, it depends on what you look like. It's big, it's corporate, it's busy, it has crazy traffic.
Yeah.
But again, I love it. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
I completely agree. It is, if you're gonna
Would you like
make
to
your
sample some whiskey?
if you're gonna be staying for a long time, I think, that it is a great place to stay for Morocco, in Morocco and have a base. It's lots of train hubs and things like that. But if you are only in the country for, say, 7 days, 8 days, you could easily skip it and not feel like you've actually missed out on anything. Um, the next question I have is around different experiences and ways for folks to get to know the culture a bit more deeply. So I think Morocco is one of those places that it's easy if you want to just go and see all of the beautiful sights and the architecture, you can just wander, but it obviously has a huge amount of history and culture, and it has different regions have different ethnic groups. There's a whole history of indigenous people. There's the Arab, history that we see in most of the architecture. There's the modern day history as well. So if folks want to go to Morocco and dive a bit more deeply into the culture, are some of the experiences you would recommend?
Of course. So, as you said, in addition to all of like the historical sites, and if you're interested in that, it's great. But I would say that it really depends again on your interests, and I feel like it's a destination that really has something for every kind of traveler. Like if you're into adventure, then of course the Sahara, the hiking in the mountains, all of that makes sense. The hot air ballooning in Marrakesh, that's all great. The vintage sidecar tour, going through the low alleyways of the Medina and seeing, the palm grove of Marrakesh. That's great. If you're a foodie, then the markets are really, a foodie's heaven with all of the Moroccan like street food delicacies, all of the sweets and the pastries and all of the ingredients that we have access to in here. So the markets themselves, cooking classes, baking classes, and just the dining experience. Like it doesn't matter how much you're paying for a meal, it's usually still going to be great in terms of flavors, etc. If you're into design, interior design, arts and crafts, like there's so much to do and see, from textiles to rugs. Like rug shopping is a big thing in Morocco. What else? Embroideries, like embroidered textiles, pottery, brass etching with all of, if you think of the Moroccan lamps and all of that, it's also great for shopping and especially for design item shopping, and it doesn't cost a leg to do it in Morocco. And then what else? It's also a great family destination. A lot of people don't necessarily think about Morocco. Of course, if you're traveling with two toddlers, I would say probably wait a little bit longer so that you can do a comprehensive itinerary. But it also has a lot to offer to kids, like animals, gardens, and a lot of these things. I don't know if you agree with that, Kat.
No, I definitely do. I think it's a destination where having kids who are like mobile and independent, because it is
Yeah.
definitely a place that it's a big country. On a map, I know it doesn't look that big. And when I moved there, I was like shocked by how far it took to get to the Sahara, or how far it took even just to get between Casablanca and Fez. Um, it is a very big country. And so if you want to see everything, it takes time, and it often takes road trips. And so I would say that, if you have small children, that can be tough for the long road trips, especially say to get to the Sahara. But I do think it's a great family destination, and I think it's a great destination also to go with friends, where if people don't all have the same interests, it's a place that you can go base yourself in Marrakesh, and the people who want to do the hiking can go on a day trip to the hiking. The people who care about the museums can go to the museums and the palaces. If you just want to hang out and relax, I know we have a question about hammam experiences. There's a lot of really beautiful, very luxurious spa experiences you can do also. So I think that, like Mariama said, there's something for everyone. I've never not had someone come and love Morocco. I think between women travel abroad and working in Morocco for a long time, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of people I've spent time with visiting Morocco for their first time, and everyone has loved it and found something unique to enjoy. Um, on the hammam question, someone asked, what do you think the best city is to do a hammam in? So context, a hammam is a traditional Moroccan type of spa. It includes multiple different stages of different rooms. You have a full body scrub, you have a steam room, you get a massage at the end. There's sort of the tourist version of a hammam, and then there's the public, everyday Moroccan life version of a hammam. So the tourist experience is much more like a spa. It's very luxurious, and it's a very 2 or 3 hour spa experience where your whole body has both a bath and a massage component. On the other hand, the traditional like Moroccan everyday hammams is something that most Moroccans do probably on a weekly basis, Mariam, monthly basis at least. Somebody goes to a hammam, and they're communal, they're public. You sit in the steam room, you do your scrubbing, you do your bathing. It's kind of more like what you hear about in Turkey, where it's public baths. When you're a tourist, we don't usually take you to a public bathhouse. You can if you want, but it is much more of a spa experience where there is a woman, typically who's a masseuse and assigned to sort of help take you through the whole spa experience. I don't know, Mariam, if you have an opinion on what city is the best for that.
That's a tough question. I feel like you could get a great experience everywhere, but I would say both Fez and Marrakesh have some great hammam experiences, like great facilities with great staff, and they know exactly what they're doing. So I would say either Fez or Marrakesh, but typically you can't go wrong no matter where you decide to do it. You just have to pick the spa right in terms of level of privacy that you
Yeah.
want. Because if you go into a public one, it's probably going to be a weird experience for you.
That was I did one public hammam in Morocco as a foreigner, and it was good. I'm glad I had that experience, but it is not something that if you're an American or someone coming from Western Europe or the US, Canada, it's a little crazy to walk into a room with a whole bunch of other naked women and be like, oh, okay, everybody's doing this. So it's definitely it's an experience. The public hammams, yes, to Katie's question, are fully nude. Sometimes people wear bathing bottoms or things like that, but typically everyone is fully nude. And in the private hammam or tourist experiences you'd get at a fancier spa, you get undressed like you do for a massage in the US or something like that. So um the other question I see here is when you think about getting around cities, is there a city where you think it's safe to rent a scooter? How do you recommend people move about, say Marrakesh or Fez? Is it better to do it by foot, bike, car? What do you recommend?
I would say when you're inside the Medina, then it makes more sense to do it on foot. I would say just walk around, see everything that's there, and then outside of the Medina's walls, definitely have a car and driver with you. Traffic, I would say in Casablanca is crazy. In Marrakesh is even crazier, but it's a different type of crazy because Marrakesh has everyone owns a motorcycle, like every single household. And they know how they drive them. Like when you look at it as someone who doesn't live there, you're like, oh my God, how do they not get into accidents? But if you're from there, it's just natural to you, and that's the way they drive. If you're a visitor, I would definitely not recommend trying, not even to rent a car and drive yourself around Morocco, let alone a scooter. We do have a few companies that do like biking and e-biking. That's something I would probably recommend outside of the bigger cities, like in the Atlas Mountains, where there is not a lot of traffic and they know the routes, etc. That I would definitely recommend it if you want to try something like that. But in the cities, have a car, have a driver with you, someone who knows how to navigate these complex, just maps of Marrakesh and Fez. How
Yeah.
do you feel about that, Kat?
I agree. I think that, and this is something that comes up a lot, when people are considering Morocco, especially as a woman, it's a challenging country to navigate with public transport alone. I think especially with language barriers, with cultural differences,
Yeah.
in the major cities, yes, you'll see lots of tourists. There are plenty of taxis and things, but at the same time, I have never been ripped off worse than by taxi drivers in Marrakesh. And so I think that while it might seem, oh my gosh, so luxurious or unnecessary to have a private driver and guide or to go with a group trip, I do think that being with a group of other people or hiring a private driver makes a huge difference in Morocco. You feel much safer, and you also just have the ability to get places quickly and efficiently rather than worrying about how am I going to catch a taxi? do I need to negotiate with a taxi driver before I get in to make sure that we've agreed on a price to get me from point A to point B? Is there going to be a language barrier? And then if you get outside of the cities, you really have no other option besides public buses, which again, if you don't speak Arabic or French, you're not going to be able to navigate on your own easily. And so if you want to get outside of, say, Marrakesh or Fez or some of the cities that you can take the train line up and down sort of the coastal part of Morocco, you really do need a driver who can take you safely from village to village, safely into the Sahara Desert. There's no way to get to the Sahara Desert without a car. And that's not winding roads, back villages are not places that I personally would feel comfortable navigating on my own, even though I do speak French and Arabic. Those were not places that I ever wanted to go completely solo. So I think at least if you are going to go solo, finding a local driver who you can hire is a huge benefit to you to be able to travel around comfortably. And I think that's where group trips in particular are great for Morocco because you are able to go with other groups of people and share the costs of a driver rather than that being all an expense you have to incur on your own. Tatiana, there's really not a reliable website to find a driver. Unfortunately, you can find companies like Experience Morocco who, are local Moroccan travel companies that can help coordinate those sorts of services. So that's who I would recommend reaching out to. It's not going to be something where there's not Uber or anything like that where you can find somebody to take you around for a day. But going to a local travel company, and hiring a driver through them is probably the most reliable option. The language barrier piece, I think that's something I can speak to. Certainly, it is challenging, especially when you get out of the cities. I'd say Morocco, in the cities, the tourists who, the tourist centers, the hotels, all of that has excellent English speaking staff. You'll be surprised that Moroccans often speak like 5 or 6 languages. It's very impressive. Even the average Moroccan speaks at least 3 languages. And so it is not impossible to get around with English, but it is challenging, especially again, if you want to go outside of the big tourist hubs and get a little bit more off the beaten path. If you want to go out to the Sahara Desert, you'll start to find that fewer and fewer people speak English. Most people are only going to speak Arabic and then the local dialects of Arabic once you get out of the major cities. Another question, which I think a lot of these are related to sort of general safety for women in Morocco. What about clothing? What should people wear when they're visiting Morocco? How is it appropriate to dress?
Yeah, this is a very common question, and I know that the internet has a lot of false information when it comes to how you should dress in Morocco. I would say that there's one place where covering your shoulders and knees is required, and that's the Hassan II Mosque in Casablanca if you're doing the full visit and going inside the mosque. Other than that, outside the cities, I mean, there's no real dress code. I would say wear something comfortable, like just be a little bit mindful of the cultural difference. But I know that you'll get shocked because you'll go into some spaces in Marrakesh and see women dressed in various ways that can be shocking sometimes. But locals can be wearing like a full veil where you can't even see their faces, and that's a very like rare portion, to women covering their hair, which would be like a bigger portion than the first one, to women that are dressed in a very Western way and don't cover their hair or anything. And it's a mix of all of that that makes Morocco. Inside the Medinas, I would say just make sure you're wearing comfortable shoes. It's typically car-free zones, as Catherine explained. And once you go inside, the only way to get outside is by walking. So no heels, nothing too tight. Also because it's gonna be hot sometimes, and you're gonna be walking on all day inside the Medina. So anything like flowy materials that are cooler, like cotton, like what's the other word? Linen.
Yeah.
That's all great. But I wouldn't worry about, do I have to cover my hair if I'm going outside of my hotel? Like these are typically not issues in Morocco.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And I pretty much wore the same things that I wore in the US for the entire 3 years that I lived in Morocco. Short sleeve shirts were fine. I tried to keep my shoulders and my knees covered generally. But you'll see, like Mariama said, you'll see plenty of Moroccans who are walking around in mini skirts and tank tops. So it's not that you can't do that. But I think as a foreigner, you draw a little bit less attention when you are wearing a little bit more modest of clothing, right? I think it makes it so that it's not so apparent to everybody that you are a foreigner. And I think it also just goes a long way in, showing respect for local culture and norms. So I would say shoulders and knees being covered as a woman is a good rule of thumb, but you definitely never need to wear a hair covering or anything like that unless you're specifically going to tour the Hassan II Mosque. And at the mosque, so one other question was shorts to the knee, yes, are okay except in the mosque. If you have like long cargo
Yeah.
length shorts, that would be totally fine. Um, Other tips, Mariama, for staying safe as a woman in Morocco? What are your recommendations, things that people can do or should research as a woman before traveling to Morocco?
Yeah, I would say the same goes for honestly men and women. If you're a foreigner, avoid taxis as much as you can, especially in Marrakesh. And by foreigner, I mean even me. I don't have a Marrakesh accent, and if I try to get a taxi in Marrakesh because I need one, like I know that I'm paying triple the price than any local from the city. Don't try to go inside the Medina alone. I've lived here for 36 years. I would never go inside a Medina, and no matter the city. People who know how to navigate the Medina are typically people who were born inside the Medina and lived inside the Medina their whole lives, which is a very tiny proportion of Moroccans. If you've lived in the modern parts of the city, like you can't go inside. The Medinas were designed as fortresses, as Catherine was saying earlier, and they were designed basically to trap the enemy and be able to kill them inside one of the little corners of the maze. So unless you're from there, you're not going to be able to recognize the streets and everything. So if you're going inside, definitely have a local guide with you, someone who can help you navigate, help you go back to that first shop that you saw the first day. Don't try to do it alone. And then the other thing, just be as mindful as you should be in every big city, like in Paris and London, in Rome. Like there's always a risk of having your phone snatched, things like that. It would never go um, worse than that, or very, very extremely rarely in Morocco. Like nobody tries to mess with tourists. But I would say just be mindful. Be mindful of your surroundings. If you're in an emptier, I would say, part of the city, like don't pull out your phone to try to take a picture. It's not worth it. Like these kinds of things that I would say apply to a lot of
Yeah.
places around the world, if not all.
Yeah. I think that was my biggest part of living there for me was just being mindful of your surroundings, like a crossbody purse that you keep in front of you, making sure that your valuables are zipped inside your purse, not putting them
Yeah.
in your back pockets. Um, I know, I think I've had as many pickpocket stories from places in Europe as I have from pickpocket stories in Morocco. So I don't think that that's something that you need to be particularly concerned about, but I do think that being mindful, being aware of your surroundings goes a long way. And again, I think having a local guide, especially at least for like your first day in each city, if you're going to go somewhere solo, makes a really big difference. So whether it's you join a local guided tour of the city that's public or you hire a local guide directly for a day, get your bearings, figure out where's your riad or your hotel versus the rest of the city and the landmarks, get your orientation, and then it's easier to explore on your own. But I definitely think having that local expertise for the beginning of each city visit makes a really big difference in making sure that you feel confident and comfortable as you explore. I can certainly say that living there for 3 years, I never felt unsafe as a woman. There were, certainly plenty of times where you hear maybe more catcalling than you would in the US, or there's a lot of stories on the internet about really terrible street harassment. But I would say if you are, again, being aware of your surroundings and being sort of respectful of local cultural norms, you're not going to have any issues as a woman. The issues tend to arise when you're drinking and walking around late at night, which can be something that happens equally in the US versus, Europe versus Morocco. So having a good head on your shoulders, I think, is the biggest key to staying safe in Morocco and really anywhere when you're traveling. A good question about Airbnbs versus hotels. Um, Again, I would say hotels are better, just they're gonna have more security for you. They also are often gonna have a local porter who, say you get dropped off in the main square of Marrakesh, your riad's probably who knows where, you're gonna have to wind your way through some alleyways to get to that riad. And if you book with a hotel that's, officially a riad, they'll have someone to come and greet you, help you take your luggage, make it through the alleyways to get to the hotel, rather than an Airbnb where you're probably going to be more on your own of having to navigate to the Airbnb, especially if it is in the um, old part of the city versus the modern part of the city. So I would say if you want to look at Airbnbs, I certainly have stayed in Airbnbs in Morocco, but I always pick the modern part of the city because that makes a big difference in being able to just give someone an address and show up at that specific address versus when you book something in the Medina, there are no addresses. It's just like go left at this souk and then go right at this mosque and, good luck. So I definitely think that hotels, if you want to stay in the old part, the Medina, stay at a riad, make sure you're booking through a reputable hotel. And again, there are lots of good recommendations, that you can find online. Most good riads will have an internet presence that you can research. Um, in terms of other final things, if there was one recommendation, Mariama, or one experience that you wish everybody could have when they're in Morocco, what would that be?
Okay, one recommendation I would say, just come with an open mind. I know that if you're a first timer, it's a destination that can seem intimidating, but I assure you it's not. But also, the only way for you to figure that out and understand what Morocco is about is for you to get and experience it yourself. There is no way to explain it. I know it's its own little place. I know it's super complex. We're in Africa, none of the African countries look at us as Africans. We're a 30-minute ferry ride from Europe, but we're not Europeans. We speak Arabic, but we're not Arabs to the rest of the Arab world. So it's, its own little complex place with a lot of influences. And it cannot be compared to any other place that I can think of in the world. So come with an open mind, just trust the process. Pick your, come in a more, I would say, structured way. Like you've booked a trip, you know who you're going with, etc. Like don't just book a hotel, show up and try to figure things on the ground, because there are chances that things are going to go wrong. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, in terms of experiences, oh my god, like there is a lot that I can think of, but I would say for me, one of the most humbling experiences for our travelers in general. When you go to the Atlas Mountains, to the hiking villages, like the hiking part of the mountains just outside Marrakesh, there is always an opportunity to go inside a local's home. And visit a Berber family or a Berber house. The Berbers are the natives, like the indigenous people of Morocco. Like they've been around way before the Romans, way before the Arabs came. They have their own language, their own culture, and the way of life in these parts of the country is still very, very, very well preserved. it's all based on the sense of like community, like the respecting the nature, being there, showing up for each other, and going inside one of those houses, getting to share, just a cup of tea with these people, ask about their daily lives and how they manage buying groceries once a week because there's only one opportunity. They only have one big weekly market. And that's the one opportunity per week to get your groceries and organize yourselves and get a haircut sometimes. So I think it's very humbling because you always get that, you know, 10-second pause when you're asking yourself what's wrong with you and what you're complaining about. And it just gets you to a point where you get more appreciation, I think, for your life and for all the privileges that we have access to. And I really think that everyone should do it. I know a lot of people don't feel comfortable going into someone's house and think it's going to be like a staged experience, but it's really not. They're the most authentic, they're the most simple people on earth, and they're there. They don't have much, but they're willing to share anything they have with you, and it's definitely worth a try. Definitely.
I think that to me, living there for 3 years, having taken groups back, I think it's the hospitality that you don't really. I have never been anywhere else on earth that has the same level of hospitality. Like, if you are hungry, a person will give up their very last piece of bread to feed you as the guest, rather than to eat themselves. And I think that to me is what makes Morocco so incredible, is because very often I think you go to a country and you want to see the way of life, but there's the tourist experience and then there's the local experience. And what I have loved about Morocco is that it is incredible how everyday people want to show you all about Morocco. They want to tell you about their lives. They want to share with you what makes this country something that they're proud of and special and unique. I've had countless, times where I was taking a train from Marrakesh back to Casablanca, and I would get chatting with a woman on the train, and she would be like, "Here's my number. Come have tea with me next week." Things that just I don't think happen at least in the US, in my experience, that the warm, genuine hospitality. So that to me is my favorite part of the country. And every time I go back, I'm struck by how welcoming every single Moroccan that I interact with is, and how excited they are for people who are not Moroccan to come and see this country that they love. So I definitely think that it is um, a great experience to go to Morocco and to go off the beaten path, like Mariama said, take those opportunities to meet with Berber folks in the Atlas Mountains, or to have tea with your driver and ask him about his life and his kids and where he grew up. Those are the things that I think you'll take away and remember most about a trip to Morocco. We have a few other questions that I want to get to, and then we'll break into some breakout rooms and wrap up. But one question was, any must-try food or drink? What do you think, Mariama?
Okay. Must try food. Oh my God. Don't leave without trying. I want to say a couscous, a tagine, yes, but that's gonna be available in almost like Moroccan menus everywhere. Take an opportunity to go inside this the little like food stalls in the Medinas. And I'm just gonna list a few things. Don't go without trying khlir. Khlir is a preserved meat. And this is how Moroccans used to preserve meat before we had access to fridges. And it's basically like a dried meat that's preserved in fat after that. And it has a very unique taste. And we use it now in the morning, just with like some scrambled eggs or like sunny side up eggs. And it's super salty, like a beef jerky kind of. But it's very moist, like less dry than that, and it has a very unique taste. So definitely that one. Morocco is also the kingdom of breads. So there are like a million different types of breads and crepes and pancakes. And yeah, just try to get to try as much as you can, because they all taste different, different textures, different ingredients. Like some are softer, some have like semolina in them, so that have more like granularity. I don't even know how to say it, like granule. I don't know what the word is. That is for harsha, for
Yeah.
example. How would you describe the texture?
That is, I was gonna say, my favorite thing to try is called misamin. And misamin is like it's like a flaky crepe. I can't quite explain it. You're not gonna find it anywhere but Morocco, but it is delicious. It's like a flat pancake, but with layers, kind of like a croissant. So if you imagine a crepe and a croissant had a child, you'd reach misamin. And misamin is delicious in the morning. You'll find street vendors who are like cooking it on their flat tops. All the kids go and get it as they're walking on their way to school. It's also really good in the evenings as like a before bed snack. You'll often find it at time. But you can put savory things on it. You can put sweet things on it. It's genuinely like the first thing that I want to eat whenever I go to Morocco. And so I definitely recommend that and all of the breads. But yeah, there's like breads like you get in the US, and then there's the crepes, and there's the breads that are more sort of crumbly, I guess.
Yeah,
Which
crumbly.
you say
That's
in
the
the
word.
US.
That's
Um,
the word. Favorite
yes,
drink would be mint tea. You're gonna be
yes.
drinking a lot of mint tea all over, but make sure Morocco is also a place where a lot of people don't know that we have wines in Morocco and vineyards. Don't leave before trying a cup or a sip of gray wine, because this is a wine that you can only find in Morocco. Its color is not gray. Don't be afraid. Like it's more of like a lighter rosé color, like a white and a rosé mixed together. And it's a type of wine that you can only find here. So make sure you order a, gray wine somewhere before leaving.
Awesome. Well, I think we covered most questions. If I didn't cover your question, please feel free. I'm going to put my information in the chat, along with information about our upcoming trips to Morocco and how to reach me personally. So if you have questions and want to talk more about Morocco, you can certainly reach out to me. And then Mariama works for Experience Morocco, which I will type in the chat as well. So you can go to their website. If you do say you're planning a personal trip to Morocco coming up and you want help with guides, drivers, all of that, certainly reach out to Mariama and her team. They're phenomenal. I do want to spend the next 10 minutes just giving folks a chance to meet and greet. So I'm going to move people into breakout rooms now. Our hosts, who you'll meet, they're members of the Women Travel Abroad community. They are going to moderate these, and we'll just spend 10 quick minutes getting to know each other all a bit more. If you have any other questions, those breakout rooms are also great times to ask. But thank you again, everybody, for joining today. I will pause the recording here, and we'll go into the breakout rooms. And thank you again, Mariama. It's always great.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend and happy Women's Day.
Thanks.
Bye bye.